I'd like to start off by thanking all of you and our great speakers for gathering on this Memorial Day for the inauguration of the National Puerto Rican Equality Coalition. My name is Martin Rivera and I'm the Executive Director of NAPREC. We will begin this event with an opening prayer by Pastor Gabriel Salguero, President of the National Latino Evangelical Coalition. Pastor Gabriel.
If you're able, will you stand with me if you're able? Will you bow your heads and open your hearts? God, we are mindful that today is a day of honoring and commemoration. And so we lift up our hearts with gratitude, con agradecimiento profundo del corazón, for the men and the women and their families that sacrificed everything so that people here could live free. For their sacrifice on this Memorial Day, we give you thanks. We are also mindful, oh God, that today is a lament for 100 years of a town wiped out, even in its self-determination in the African American community. But thirdly, God, we are mindful that you are a God of freedom, of liberty, of self-determination. And so, God, as we gather here this afternoon on Memorial Day, the most sacred day in our history, would you give us the wisdom, the strategy, the boldness to empower our people, as in the book of Proverbs, to speak up, to speak with boldness, with clarity, and with civility, so that all of your children here in la isla de Puerto Rico, their determination would be respected and honored. This we pray in the name of the one the ancients called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Prince of Peace, Everlasting Father. In the matchless name of Jesus, amen. You may be seated.
Thank you, Pastor Gabriel. Next, please rise for the national anthem and La Borinqueña, Puerto Rico's national anthem. Ángel Delgado for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to my flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Specialist Delgado. We gather on this Memorial Day to honor the distinguished military service and sacrifice of Puerto Rican veterans. Since the First World War, Puerto Ricans have fought in every military conflict of the United States, from the honorable service of the Army's 65th Infantry Regiment, the Borinqueniers, who served as a segregated Hispanic unit made up primarily of Puerto Ricans, and earned numerous awards and commendations for their valor, such as the Congressional Gold Star and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. To present day, Puerto Rican service members continue to defend and protect our country honorably. However, veterans and all Puerto Ricans who live on the island still lack the right to vote for their commander-in-chief or have voting representation in Congress merely for residing on the island. After more than 100 years of this injustice, we must move towards granting equality to our fellow U.S. citizens as a matter of civil rights, to honor Puerto Rican service members who have given the ultimate sacrifice to protect the American way of life. This last November, the majority of Puerto Rican voters chose to join the Union, and we must listen to the will of the people of Puerto Rico. This is an issue of civil rights and democracy. That is why, as a nonprofit that is nonpartisan and non-governmental, NAPREC is focused on empowering, educating, and fighting for the equality of not just the 3.2 million U.S. citizens through statehood, but also to the estimated 6 million Puerto Ricans residing on mainland. Through our advocacy and civic action on the federal, state, and local levels, we will urge for Puerto Rico to become a state of the Union and support federal legislation that respects the will of voters on the island. It is now Congress's time to act and ensure equality for our fellow citizens and veterans in Puerto Rico. Again, I would like to thank all of you, and today's speakers for taking the time to be here to honor our service members and demand for the equality of Puerto Ricans. We greatly appreciate it. Now, I would like to welcome and give a special thank you to NAPREC's Vice President of the Board of Directors, Anthony Suarez, for allowing us to hold the event here today. Mr. Suarez has served this country honorably through his military service as captain of the Military Intelligence Corps and as a former state legislator. In his roles as president of the Puerto Rican Bar Association and professor of law at Barry University, he continues to advocate for the equality of Puerto Ricans. Please join me in welcoming Anthony Suarez.
Arriba muchachos, vamos a zarpar, a lejanas tierras vamos a pelear, por los caminos de la ley y el bien, marcha el regimiento de mi Borinquen, todo por la patria la habremos de dar, por padres hermanos que quedan acá, por la noviecita, el hijo y mi Dios, a nuestra querida decimos adiós, adiós terruño dorado de mis anhelos, no olvides de fe y goce en tus oraciones, que yo en mis noches tristes con mis canciones podré aliviar la angustia de mi dolor. No pierda siempre, lucha con valor, nuestro regimiento se cubrió de honor. En 1000 batallas, 100 batallas, 100, siempre cara al viento, marcha el regimiento de mi Borinquen, de mi Borinquen.
Once again, thank you all for coming. Please have a seat, guys. It's making me tired just by looking at you. And of course, thank you, my team, for having this event. And of course, the whole purpose of having this placita is precisely to be able to do events like this. Of course, being an Army guy, having my flag being hidden behind you could have hidden the Marine Corps one, but instead of the Army one. But okay, we'll deal with that. Obviously, we're here because we want to promote a very clear issue. And you know, Martin mentioned it, but look at these numbers. It'll blow your mind. In World War I, 18,000 Puerto Ricans served in World War I. 65,000 Puerto Ricans served in World War II. 48,000 in Vietnam, 61,000 in the Korean War. Over 10,000 in the Gulf War, 38,000 deployed Operation Freedom and Iraqi Freedom, 61,000, as I said, in the Korean War. Currently, there are 25,000 Puerto Ricans in our armed services, with over 8,400 in the National Guard. Now, that is not shocking, except for the fact that the reason these people are in the Army served this nation in World War I and II so that Europeans could vote and have democracy. And they went to Iraq so that Iraqis can vote and have democracy. And they went in the Middle East so the people in the Middle East can have democracy and they can vote. In Vietnam and in Korea, Puerto Ricans died so those people can have the ability to vote and participate in democracy. And to this day, we still have a nation that is nothing less than what the Supreme Court has said is not sovereign, is a colony. How is that consistent? Tens of thousands of Puerto Ricans serve today, and they serve in the civilian government, whether it's the United States government, United States Attorney's Office, or wherever in Congress, and they serve to ensure that other Americans preserve their right to democracy. That being the case, ladies and gentlemen, how is it possible that it is consistent with our Constitution, consistent with the spirit of our Declaration of Independence, that we can maintain people in a position that they cannot vote for the president, that's sending them, they can make a determination whether or not cockfighting is legal or not. We cannot have second-class citizens, even if the island wants it. Even if 100% of the Puerto Ricans say, I want to be in a colony, it should not be allowed because it's our Constitution which dictates us. We are before the world holding a people unable to vote. So the battle continues. This is the beginning. What we hope will be the support of a bill that is pending in Congress, and we have our congressman here who's going to talk about his bill. But it is time that all of us are enlisted in this battle. This is the hill. This is what we have to attack. This is where we need to go. We need to make sure that Congressman Soto's bill gets through Congress and gets through the Senate. Until equality is solved, until we have equality for Puerto Rico, this battle is not over. I got it off my chest. But let's take a moment to silence for all the service members, everyone who's died in this nation. If you could join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Let me introduce Mr. George Laws, who is a longtime advocate of Puerto Rican statehood with a well-established track record of advancing statehood movement through his previous role as the Executive Director of the Puerto Rican Federal Affairs Office, PRAFA, and now is currently as the Executive Director of the Puerto Rico Statehood Council. Please join me in welcoming George Laws.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is George Laws. I'm the Executive Director of the Puerto Rico State Council. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. And our goal is to advance full democracy and full equality for the U.S. citizens of Puerto Rico. We are very proud to join NAPREC today on this very special occasion to launch their organization and to support the engagement of the Puerto Rican community and allies here in Florida and across the entire nation of the United States in recognition that those sacrifices that have been made on behalf of our nation by all of the men and women who have served throughout this last century, and especially by those who have paid the ultimate price with their lives in defense of American security and American democracy, deserves to be rewarded with full democracy and equality at home. And that, under the U.S. Constitution, is only available to the U.S. citizens of Puerto Rico through statehood. We are incredibly grateful to have such an outstanding champion, Congressman Darren Soto, who has been absolutely amazing in this effort. He's stood side by side with Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez Colon in ensuring that the voices of the majority of voters in Puerto Rico are respected. Congress needs to respect Puerto Rico's statehood vote. That's the message. Congress needs to respect our vote for equality and full democracy. And Congress needs to do that by enacting legislation that offers the people of Puerto Rico full equality through statehood, and that's exactly what Congressman Darren Soto's bill does. So, from my vantage point at the Puerto Rico State Council, I'd like to thank everyone who's involved in NAPREC. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Mr. Suarez, and everyone else who's joining us today. Because the reality is, in order for the voices of the majority of voters of Puerto Rico to be heard, we need all Puerto Ricans and all Puerto Rican, non-Puerto Rican allies here in the States to step up to the plate and call your member of Congress, call your representatives, call your senators. If they're Darren Soto, call him to congratulate them. And if they're members who haven't yet co-sponsored a bill here in the House, let's make sure that they hear that this is something that matters to you. And if they're the senators who have not yet co-sponsored the bill in the Senate, tell them this matters to you as voters, as people who are here in the district, that this is something that's important to you. And if you say that message, and you carry that message, and you ask your family and friends to carry that message, Congress will respond, and we will be able to honor the great sacrifice of all of the Puerto Rican service members who have given their lives in defense of our country by awarding full equality and full democracy to the U.S. citizens of Puerto Rico. Thank you so much.
Thank you, George Laws. Thank you for your kind words. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing Jose Alvarez, the former mayor of Kissimmee. Jose Alvarez has been a leading voice for our community and those in need, especially when it comes to the fair and affordable housing. Please join me in welcoming Jose Alvarez.
Thank you very much. There you go. See?
I could not avoid to do that. Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here. You might say, the ex-mayor of the city of Kissimmee, I'm retired. Why is he here? Well, I was asked to be here, and it was an honor to be asked. See, it's really easy to speak. Talk is cheap. Action speaks louder than word. There we have a congressman. He has spoken and he has taken action. And those in D.C. need to learn from him and what he's done. Today, as we remember all the men and women who fought bravely to protect our freedoms and made the ultimate sacrifice for our country, let us not forget that Puerto Ricans have served in every major U.S. war since World War I. And unfortunately, they still do not have the same rights as every other veteran that has served. And it's pretty sad to say that. In becoming a state, Puerto Ricans could enjoy both benefits associated with statehood and the tools needed to develop their own industry and workforce on the island. Statehood would increase local job opportunities, bring higher income creation benefits, and enable locals to receive better health care, which they're already paying for, but do not currently benefit from. Another shameful thing to say, but it's the truth. What's more, with Puerto Ricans enjoying statehood benefits from the comfort of their own homes, they will finally be able to pursue and live the American dream. That's why we're Americans. That's why we're here. According to the American history, they say, all men are equal in the eyes of the law. Then why don't Puerto Ricans have equal say in the laws they must uphold? That's a question. Why? The U.S. currently controls Puerto Rico's external affairs and federal regulations, yet Puerto Ricans are ineligible to vote in the U.S. presidential election. They can't vote for their commander-in-chief, the one that they serve when they serve and died in the military. And have only a non-voting representative in the House. That's shameful. They don't have someone that can really speak for themselves. But they have Congressman Soto, and we're very thankful for that. You do not annex a place, make it your colony for over a century, and then reject its people's vote for statehood. You just don't do that. It is time for everyone to unite under one voice and tell Congress and the Senate that enough is enough. The time for Puerto Rican statehood is now. Thank you. Be blessed.
Thank you, Jose Alvarez. Next, we will hear from former State Representative Bob Cortez, who has been a longtime advocate for Puerto Rican equality at the state level, where he was tapped as state chairman of the Puerto Rican outreach by Governor Ron DeSantis. Please welcome Bob Cortez.
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes a todos. ¿Cómo están todos ustedes? Bien. Good. It is an honor and a pleasure for me to be here today to support the mission of Maverick and to talk about how we can get this done. First of all, Tony, you mentioned it very eloquently. The fact that we have gone and fought wars only to come back and not being able to vote for our commander-in-chief or our Congress or president for over 100 years. And to the fact that Puerto Ricans have actually been fighting way before they were citizens. They were fighting in the Revolutionary War. But here's one interesting fact. In the Korean War, 61,000 went to fight. Over 750 died and never came back. Some that went actually ended up getting arrested, only to be pardoned later on for not taking the stand and refusing an order that would have led them to certain death. One of those was my good friend Sergeant Francisco Olivera Padilla. Francisco Olivera Padilla was drafted to the Army and went to Korea in 1950. In 51, he became a prisoner of war, was shot in the leg, and disappeared. He disappeared for over 2 years. Nobody knew from him. For all the family knew, this man was dead and missing in action, was not coming back. Francisco Olivera was alive, very much so, caught prisoner, and was treated very well by the Koreans. How do I know this? Because he was my friend and my neighbor, and I spoke to him about this. And he told me the stories that happened there. Where he was in the prison camp, there was no fences or gates. He was allowed to leave. But nobody dared to leave because they were going to go into the jungle and swamp and they were never going to make it out. So they preferred to stay in the house that they were fed and treated well. For over 2 years, Sergeant Francisco Olivera Padilla was missing in action. Armistice, he comes back home. And he came back home to Puerto Rico. And he had led a humble life. A humble life that was a TV repairman, a bicycle salesman, and other things. And never spoke about what he did for his country. But also, Francisco Olivera Padilla was never able to vote for his commander-in-chief. This is a man that almost gave his life, like many thousands of Puerto Ricans that went there and came back to Puerto Rico only to live and not being able to vote for the commander-in-chief or have a representative in Congress. That needs to stop now. And that's why I'm here today. So you're asking, why are we talking about this? Because we can enact a change. We can be the voice for the Puerto Ricans that live on the island, that don't have enough of a strong voice to do it. The 6 million that live here in the United States. And by the way, we can vote for our commander-in-chief, we can vote for our congressman, we can vote for our senator. We can do that change for our fellow Puerto Ricans that live on the island. And I urge you to do that. How? Well, first of all, this is not a partisan thing. This is not a Republican, this is not a Democrat thing. This is a Puerto Rican thing. And Darren Soto and I had the honor and the pleasure to serve with him in the legislature. And in 2016, we did together House Memorial 601 that promoted economic recovery for the island. We passed it together. He's in the Senate, I'm in the House. We sent this to Congress so they can help. A year later, of course, Maria hit, and they got a lot of help from the United States government. But that's not enough. That's not enough. We need to fight for equality. And I'm asking and urging you here to contact your representatives, your congressmen, your senators, anybody who would listen, and tell them, we need to provide help to our fellow Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico and give them what many have fought for and lost their lives throughout the nations in fighting wars. Give them dignity, give them equality, give them the right to vote for the commander-in-chief and others. And finally, also, honor the Constitution, the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which gives the sovereignty of the state, which Puerto Ricans have their hands tied in many decisions that would help their fellow Puerto Ricans because they do not enjoy what is enjoyed in the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. So, folks, I thank you very much for being here. It's an honor and a pleasure. God bless.
Allow me to welcome our NAPREX Secretary, Nathaniel Morel.
Thank you, Representative Cortez, for your words. For those that don't know me, I'm Mr. Morel Gonzalez. I'm NAPREC Secretary. I'm a proud supporter of Puerto Rican equality and of course statehood. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I moved to Florida shortly after Hurricane Maria. I support Puerto Rican statehood and equality not just because it's something that is fair, it's because it will help to bring a more perfect union. This is something that is not supposed to be just a single party issue, it's a bipartisan issue. So thank you for all of you for coming here and showing your support. I also serve in this military. Thank you for all veterans that are here and to all those that serve. And it is the perfect opportunity to honor our service members that gave the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, especially those that coming from Puerto Rico couldn't vote and didn't have the chance to choose their commander-in-chief, even though that they were fighting for this great nation. I would like to introduce Commissioner Maribel Cordero. She's a proud supporter of Puerto Rican statehood and somebody that is a great ally for the Puerto Rican community. Please, Commissioner Cordero.
She's not here.
Not here?
Not here.
My apologies for her. Come here. Well, instead of, we'd like to hear from Representative Daisy Morales, who has proven a track record of being a passionate and trusted community advocate, ready to fight for civil rights and affordable health care for everyone, including the communities of color. Please join me in welcoming State Representative Daisy Morales.
Hello everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm State Representative Daisy Morales, formerly supervisor of soil and water conservation. And through my track record, managed with the grace of God and His own hand, I am here to serve my community. I was born and raised in New York, but I also lived in Puerto Rico. I finished high school, college, got married, raised my son, and then I came here to Orlando. Been here for 35 years, and I've seen a lot. A lot has happened here since I've been here. That is why I took this oath to serve my people. And now that we are uniting with this new nonprofit organization, I'm here to support and do whatever it is to work with our congressmen, our senators, and all that will gladly be joining us to support this cause. So we need unity. En la unión está la fuerza. Tenemos que unirnos. Y la voz está aquí ahora. Estamos aquí presentes y le doy gracias a Dios por estar aquí. So, le voy a dar las gracias. Okay, Miguel. Thank you.
Thank you, State Representative Daisy Morales. Next, we will have one of the co-founders and member of Board of Directors of NAPREC, Emilio Ruiz. Emilio?
Thank you very much. And thank you, Representative Daisy Morales, for being here and supporting the cause. My name is Emilio Ruiz. I'm the co-founder and member of the Board of Directors of the National Puerto Rican Equality Coalition. I'm also the treasurer of the Board of Directors. I was born and raised in Lincoln, on the west coast of the island, and I know firsthand the inequality of the people of Puerto Rico are subject due to the territorial status for 120 years. I am glad to see bipartisan support today at this event, and through our grassroots movements, we will fight to end the colonial status of the island that limits Puerto Ricans' ability to prosper in life, politically, economically, and socially. And now, we will hear from Roberto Lefranc Fortuño, who is part of the recently elected Puerto Rico Shadow Delegation to continue advocate for the Puerto Rican statehood at the federal level. Roberto Lefranc Fortuño is currently a municipal legislature of the city of Guaynabo, and we want to welcome today recently elected Congressman Roberto Lefranc Fortuño.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here and letting me talk to you on such a special day. I am Roberto Lefranc Fortuño, a delegate elect to the Puerto Rico statehood delegation in Congress. It is an honor to be here with Congressman Dalen Soto, whom I thank for your support in equality fight, and all distinguished members of the Puerto Rico statehood movement. Today we honor the brave men and women who have served in our great nation's military and defend our liberties and democracy. It is remarkable that the National Puerto Rican Equality Coalition chooses Memorial Day to launch their grassroots organization, whose membership has a great many veterans. I am here because organizations such as this one are key to spreading the message, the correct statement message to the halls of Congress. Thank you, Anthony Nabre, for inviting me, and all of you members for working in this important project. And you can count in me for your support. Thank you very much.
We certainly wish you the best in Washington, D.C. And now, next we will hear from Mr. Barry Cotton, who is Senator Rick Scott's Regional Director. And we want to thank you for being here, Mr. Cotton, for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cotton.
Happy to be here today. My name is Barry Cotton. I'm the Central Florida District Director for Senator Rick Scott. In honor of today's ceremony, Senator Scott prepared a letter. It reads, "Dear friends, I am proud to recognize the efforts of the National Puerto Rican Equality Coalition and the Puerto Rican Equality Day Kickoff event. Thank you for your hard work to support Puerto Ricans both in Florida and on the island. As governor, I traveled to Puerto Rico regularly and did everything I could do to help the island recover after Hurricane Maria. As a U.S. Senator, I have vowed to be the voice for Puerto Rico in the Senate and will continue to fight for our brothers and sisters on the island. My focus on making sure Puerto Rico's economy prospers and the new administration on the island works towards economic growth. We know statehood is in Puerto Rico's future and is the only way to finally bring equality to American citizens on the island. I am proud to be your partner in Washington as we continue working to bring equality to Puerto Rico. Again, thank you for your hard work to support and represent the Puerto Rican community. I wish you the best for a wonderful event. Sincerely, Rick Scott, United States Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry Cotton. Now I have the honor and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, a friend, a mentor, and my former boss, Congressman Darren Soto, the first Floridian of Puerto Rican descent to serve in the U.S. Congress. Congressman Soto has been a leading voice for Puerto Rico in the House of Representatives. As the lead sponsor of the Puerto Rico Statehood Admission Act, the Congressman has also been one of our strongest allies for Puerto Rico statehood in Congress. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Darren Soto.
So proud of this guy, by the way. Can I just say that? It's fitting that we're here in Florida talking about this really important subject. While we know this bill has both Resident Commissioner Gonzalez Colon and my name on it, it's Puerto Rico's bill. It will be Florida Ricans that will help us get there, help lift us up. I'm proud to say we have most of the delegation on the bill, Democrat and Republican. All the Democrats, most of the Republicans in the House. I'm heartened to see members of Senator Scott's office here, and we're hoping that both Senator Rubio as well will co-sponsor the bill. We know they believe in statehood in their hearts. Now is the time. We know the history of the Burecaneers, and it's so fitting on Memorial Day to launch this effort. For whatever we say here, cannot consecrate this effort more than the blood of so many veterans, so many soldiers, so many Puerto Ricaneers who died serving this country. We know the history. Spain ceded Puerto Rico to the U.S. in 1898 in the Treaty of Paris. Puerto Rico became a U.S. territory. 120 some odd years later, Puerto Rico continues to be a U.S. territory, unfortunately. And the Army National Guard was formed in Puerto Rico, March 2nd, 1917. The first U.S. shot of World War I was fired in Puerto Rico by Army Lieutenant Teofilo Marsquach. He was an officer of the day in El Morro Castle at the entrance to San Juan Bay when war was declared. Think about that, the first shot fired in World War I by the United States. Also in World War I, we saw some of our first casualties. Montserrat Padilla was one of the first members of the city of Cabo Rojo, Puerto Rico, to enlist in the Army. Padilla was a member of the Kilo Infantry, the 307th Infantry Regiment, with whom he went to the battlefront in Europe in April 1918. After fighting in the battles of Lorraine and Chateau Thierry in France, he was poisoned with mustard gas on August 26, 1918, and returned to Puerto Rico. We remember Barricaneer Montserrat Padilla today on this Memorial Day. During World War II, the 65th Infantry Regiment, the Barricaneers, were sent to Panama to protect the Pacific and to France. Puerto Ricans played key roles in the war. Navy Admiral Horatio Rivera became the first person of Hispanic descent to achieve the rank of admiral. Ships under his command provided artillery cover for the Marines landing in Guadalcanal, Marshall Islands, and Okinawa. And Lieutenant General Pedro de Valle, the first Hispanic U.S. Marine Corps general, played a key role in the Guadalcanal campaign and the Battle of Guam, and became the first commanding general of the 1st Marine Division. We heard the numbers. Over 60,000 Puerto Ricans served in the Caribbean, Pacific, and Europe during World War II. Today we remember those Puerto Ricans who lost their lives, their heroism, and their sacrifices. Then another 61,000 Puerto Ricans served in the Korean War. I just had the honor of attending a birthday party of 93-year-old Socrates Guzman. Socrates Guzman lives in Point Siena, so he can vote for president. But if he lived in the island still, even with all the sacrifices he made in Korea so long ago, he wouldn't be able to do that. The Barricaneers fought in many notable operations in the Korean War. Operation Killer, and became the first regiment to cross the Han River. They were instrumental in breaking the Iron Triangle. They took part in the last recorded battalion-style bayonet attack by the U.S. on January 31st, 1951. The 65th is credited with participation in 9 campaigns, and its members have at least 10 Distinguished Service Cross awards, 256 Silver Stars, 596 Bronze Stars. More than 750 Puerto Ricans lost their lives in Korea. And today, on this Memorial Day, we remember their heroism. We remember their sacrifices. In Vietnam, there are over 48,000 Puerto Ricans serving in the 4 services branches of the armed forces. They served bravely, and by then were integrated into desegregated units. Of the more than 340 Puerto Ricans who died in combat, 17 were listed missing in action in Vietnam. Today we remember their heroism and sacrifices on this Memorial Day. The VA department has listed that over 100,000 Puerto Rican veterans served in wars in our country, and more than 1,200 of them died while serving the United States. We remember their heroism. We remember their sacrifices. Throughout their history, the Barricaneers served a commander-in-chief who they could not vote for. We heard that so many times here today. But that's why we're speaking here on Memorial Day. They served in segregated units and were discriminated against by the very country they sought to defend. Despite this adversity, they answered a call to protect the homeland, to defend our freedom and democracy, and to those Puerto Ricans who lost their lives in service of our country. We remember those sacrifices. We remember that heroism. In 2008, I had the honor of helping pass the first resolution honoring the Barricaneers by a state legislature. Lieutenant Governor Kenneth McClintock was there to help chronicle the day. We had a dinner 2 weeks later. We had over 36 Buccaneers who got to attend that dinner in Orlando. There were many more of them then. We've lost so many to time since that day in 2008. But other states like New York, California, Massachusetts, and others followed suit, honoring the Buccaneers over the years. In 2014, we know, finally, justice was served when they were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal for their bravery and service. And it was a Floridian, Representative Posey, a co-sponsor of the bill, who sponsored that bill in the Congress. We celebrate this incredible honor and recognition. When I went to Afghanistan, halfway across the country, or across the world, one of the units I was greeted by was a Puerto Rican unit who was there in the desert. What are Puerto Ricans doing in the desert halfway across the world? They're there because they love this country. That's why they're there. And when I met them, I was greeted like a hero, and I had to remind them they are the heroes. But after all, they have one non-voting resident commissioner who is amazing. Jennifer Gonzalez-Colon and I work on every bill you could imagine. I don't think there's a bill that she has I'm not a co-sponsor of. And again, it's that connection between Florida Ricans and those brothers and sisters on the island. Yet the fight for freedom continues. Puerto Ricans on the island live as second-class citizens, yet they still serve at double the rate of those on the mainland in the military because of patriotism, because of their belief in service. And in November, Puerto Ricans spoke clearly. They voted in favor of statehood in a high turnout general election in a simple yes or no ballot. In response, I joined Jennifer Gonzalez-Colon in filing the Puerto Rico Statehood Admissions Act, which would create one last binding election. And if a majority of Puerto Ricans voted yes, they'd be automatically admitted as a state after a brief transition period. This is, after all, the same process that dozens of states went through over the years. I'm pleased to announce we had our first hearing already on this bill in the Natural Resources Committee, a committee that I and Commissioner Gonzalez-Colon serve on. This was the first hearing on a Puerto Rico statehood admissions bill in the history of Congress. We had others that talked about status, but this was the first hearing entertaining a bill. Now we await the U.S. Department of Justice's analysis of our bill and of a convention bill. And then we will push for that vote in the Natural Resource Committee that I expect to happen this fall. On the day of that hearing, we had the majority leader in the House, Steny Hoyer, a longtime ally, co-sponsor it. That is critical, because after we get it out of committee, we need to get to the floor of the House of Representatives. For any of you who've seen that committee, you'll know that Republicans and Democrats came together. 2/3 of the time was spent talking about how critical statehood was, how there had been an election, and how we need to honor our democracy, because after the people vote, action has to happen. And we will continue that bipartisan tradition, as we saw here today and will continue to see. And we will continue until we have a vote on the House floor. And I am convinced, by my knowledge of the supporters that we have already on the bill and otherwise, that if the vote was held today in the House, it would pass. This is where Florida, again, will play a critical role. Our senators, both here in Florida and Pennsylvania and several other states, could be key leaders in this, joining co-sponsors like Senator Padilla from California, Senator Heinrich, and others. This is what our task is here in Florida, and this is our task across the nation, to help us continue down this path to a vote in the House and a vote in the Senate. And then finally, Puerto Ricans on the island will get their final say. This is about democracy. If after we pass this bill they don't know, then you know what? We all tried our best. This is rooted in the foundation of the will of the people. But I think we know what's going to happen. Once they're given an absolute ironclad promise that this will be the last election, that this one will count, that this one will matter, I believe they will vote yes, as they have done several times before. On this Memorial Day, we must do more. We must honor those Baricaneers, the thousands who died with action. We must ensure their sacrifices were not in vain. We will admit Puerto Rico as a state to the Union, and viva los Baricaneers. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Congressman, for those moving words. Last but certainly not least, we will hear from NAPREC's Chair, Anthony Carrillo, who will provide closing remarks to conclude today's event. Anthony?
Buenas noches a todos. Good evening. Thank you, Congressman, and all the guests here present. Equality for a more perfect union. Igualdad para una unión más perfecta. That six-word motto is incomplete until we get this star in the U.S. flag. So we need to make sure that happens. Before we adjourn tonight, I want to send a message to our community. A nuestros hermanos boricuas y a la comunidad en general, we need you and we want you in this fight for equality for American citizens. A nuestra comunidad en la Florida y Estados Unidos, ustedes que viven en Florida, Texas, California, Pensilvania, Nueva York, sin ustedes esto no va a ocurrir. We need you in this movement today. ¿Qué pueden hacer para conectarse con nosotros? Go right now to our Facebook page, National Puerto Rican Equality Coalition. Or you can get in on PuertoRicoEquality.org and you can get involved today. If you believe that our community should have equal representation, this is your place. If you believe that our community deserves more power and representation on equal footing, this is your place. And if you believe that every American citizen should be treated equally regardless of their zip code, this is your place. So join us as we start this movement to make sure Puerto Ricans have equality every single place. And now, I want to invite the board of directors of NAPREC. And Congressman Soto, please come on here. We have a small token of appreciation for your effort.
National Puerto Rican Equality Coalition, May 31st, 2021, Orlando, Florida. A resolution on recognizing Congressman Darren Soto. Section 1 reads, the National Puerto Rican Equality Coalition Executive Board hereby finds, determines, and declares as follows. Whereas the National Puerto Rican Equality Coalition purpose and that of its roundtable partners is to unite citizens from across the United States in civic action, to empower, educate, and advocate for the equality of Puerto Ricans throughout the nation. Whereas as an elected official, you have contributed to fulfill our organization's mission and vision by leading through example and encouraging future generations to do the same through activism. Therefore, be resolved, Section 1, we recognize the invaluable and historic contributions you have made to our movement for the equality of Puerto Ricans, which is imperative to the successful operations of this organization and has served as the inspiration to generations of activists within NAPREC that continue to fight in defense of the principles and values we share. And we congratulate and thank you for your leadership, hard work, and perseverance as a leader of the statehood movement, and we wish you the very best in all your endeavors. This resolution was presented by the Puerto Rican Equality Coalition Executive Board Monday, May 31st of 2021.
Thank you to NAPREC, and I accept this on behalf of 1.2 million Puerto Ricans who stand with their brothers and sisters on the island for equality and statehood. Thank you.
Gracias a todos, esto concluye los eventos de esta noche. Again, thank you for being here, and we'll see you in the room for equality. Thank you, man.
Real quick, we have refreshments and a few snacks, a little bit of food for everyone. So please make yourselves welcome.